to preview Manchester City taking on Inter Milan tomorrow. This will be a rematch of the Champions League final from the 2021-2022 edition. No, not the 2022-2023 edition, in which Manchester City were able to win 1-0 through the winning goal for Rodri in the final. But this is 2 years later on. Both teams find themselves similar position. Again, this is Inter Milan team on the back of winning Serie A, a really strong team. And then City, the best team in the world, the best quality in the world, the best array of talent, and they're back to playing a really high level football the way that they've started the season. For me, it's not been talked about. With Manchester City, a lot of people have been talking about the financial charges, and rightfully so. There's some serious accusations, 115 charges, and that will always be the big story with City, especially with the hearing just starting on Monday and all. But City have played some brilliant football this season. Erling Haaland, 9 goals in 4 games. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it'll be very interesting to see if Haaland can continue that ridiculous form he's had in the Premier League, and if he can bring that into the Champions League against high-level opposition at the highest level of football. And for me, City, Inter Milan, these are 2 of the top 6-7 teams in football. So it doesn't get much better than this. 2 teams with a little bit contrasting styles. I think Manchester City does have more quality and are the favorites in this game with the combination of quality and the fact that they're playing at the Etihad. But for me, I have, with the likes of Lautaro Martinez and the likes of Lautaro Martinez and the crew that Inter Milan have built, in the football that they play with Thuram, Mkhitaryan, Di Marco, Çalhanoğlu, Barella, Darmian. Can they put up, can they go into Manchester City, defend really, really well with the back 3, don't give up much spaces, and be able to take advantage of the pace of Lautaro Martinez? He's going to be very pivotal to take advantage of trying to play in behind City, because I do think Inter Milan will not be defensive. That's not really what Inter Milan, they do play back 5, but they're not going to go sit in, park the bus or anything, but be compact and play from back to front and take advantage of individual moments going forward, because Inter Milan does have the quality to do that. Now, Inter Milan, they haven't had the most smooth start to the season. They find themselves third in Serie A, obviously. Not the worst start, but they have dropped points in 2 games. They dropped points this past the game to Spezia. No, not Spezia. They dropped points to Monza, and then they dropped points to start off the season against Genoa to 2. But they also had that really good performance before the international window, where they were able to get 4 past Atalanta. An Atalanta team, we know it's an elite team. They won the Europa League last season. A little bit injury ravaged that team is this season, but there's still quality that they have. Inter Milan was able to get 4 goals past them and play a really, really good game and be clinical. And that's going to be necessary for Inter Milan in the City game. Another storyline in this game between City and Inter Milan, both of these teams have huge games coming up this weekend, and it's going to be interesting to see how Pep Guardiola and Simone Inzaghi mix and match their players for this game, because City do take on their, the main rival to them winning the Premier League. With respect to Liverpool, despite the loss to Nottingham Forest, I still think they have, real quality and real a chance to be up there. But it's clear that Arsenal, City, those are probably the 2 teams that are going to be added at the end of the season. They've been added at the end of the season for the past few years now. That's a big game for City early on at Etihad. They're already 2 points ahead of City. They're already 2 points ahead of Arsenal, City. They can get that win. They're 5 points ahead with only 4 or 5 games played in the Premier League, or 5 or 6 games played in the Premier League. That's a gap to have this early on, and you're already looking at, Arsenal already being really on the back foot. So obviously the importance is there. As far as Inter Milan, haven't had the greatest starts. And they're going up against, it's a Milan derby though. And a Milan derby is always intense going up against AC Milan. Going up against AC Milan that hasn't had the greatest start now. But it is a Milan derby. We know what I said about Inter Milan. They've already dropped points in 2 games this season. They don't want to drop points in the third. And it's going to be high intensity. The rivalry is going to be very fierce going up against Milan. So that's always a big game, even with AC Milan not being what they've been. AC Milan still has quality with Rafael Leao, with Alvaro Morata, with Christian Pulisic to take advantage of an Inter Milan team that's a little fragile. And they'll have an extra day's rest, AC Milan will, because AC Milan played a day earlier. AC Milan played on Tuesday, Inter Milan playing on Wednesday. And Inter Milan having to go to Manchester. AC Milan actually get to stay at the San Siro. They played at the San Siro on Tuesday, and they're staying there to take on Inter. So that, there's going to be some advantage there that for AC Milan. So how do Simone Inzaghi and Pep Guardiola, how do they approach these games? Do they go with a full throttle team and look at it at a one game at a time, really start off? Because also these Champions League campaign, these group stage games, they're important even for these big teams. They're important for a team like City and Inter Milan. You don't want to find yourselves in a position that you're playing unnecessary games in January. You want to get into that top 8 so you don't have to play a qualifier to get into the knockout stages. You're already having to play 2 extra games in the Champions League group stages with this new format. It's really unnecessary for them to play another 2. So they want to, take advantage of these opportunities early on, so later on it's still the group or league phase, you give yourself a little bit of flexibility that you can drop points, but you can still retain your position in the top 8, so you don't have to play one of those games. So I'm very, very fascinated to see how these two managers mix and match. Again, with Manchester City, they just want to continue to do what they're doing. The football that they play under Guardiola, they want to continue going at it. Erling Haaland, he needs to continue his momentum. The interesting thing about Manchester City, I have to say, so far to start off this season, Rodri has not started a game for City this season. After having a really long season last season, not only was he, was very important to City, played in every game for City last season that he was not injured, but also, was part of the team for Real Madrid that went on and won not Real Madrid, for Spain that went on and won the European Championship later on into the summer. And he's done a good job. Pep Guardiola has done a really good job being able to rest not only him, but a lot of the players that went on a deep run. Him, Phil Foden, Kyle Walker, John Stones. Now, Kyle Walker and John Stones, they started to get introduced back into the City team post-international break. But Rodri and Phil Foden, not necessarily as well. Is this the moment, going up against Inter Milan, to open up your Champions League campaign? Is this the moment that Rodri gets back into it? I would think so, because you don't want to throw him in there for Arsenal. That Arsenal game, you don't want that to be his first sort of, game that he starts this season. You're sort of throwing him into the fire, in which we know that Rodri, he'll be capable of handling that. He's an experienced player. He's a professional. But I have to say, for him to start against Arsenal, I expect him to have some sort of role in this game at Inter Milan, in my opinion. And I do think Guardiola will be playing with fire if he just, sits him out for another week and doesn't play him against Inter Milan or Arsenal. I think you're playing with huge fire. I think Manchester City, they smell blood right now with Arsenal. And the fact that, Arsenal, they have 2 draws. Not 2 draws, they've dropped points already. City have been dominant. You go 5 points up this early on, you really set a tone, and you put Arsenal in a vulnerable position 1 month into the season. And when City smell blood, they will take advantage and they will fire. So I think Pep Guardiola can't underestimate that and needs to go with a full-fledged team. And if that means Rodri needs to have needs to be introduced in this game at Inter Milan. I think this is the moment that he gets introduced into the season. He makes, I don't know, has he even made a substitute appearance so far to start off the season? Um, Rodri, yeah, he did. He was able to he got on the field against Bournemouth. Um, but yeah, and Rodri, he said he had a lot of comments saying players are close to strike over too many games. We know Rodri, he was public in terms of needing publicly said that he needed rest in the middle of their campaign last season. So he's not been afraid to come out and be vocal of the issues that he had amongst him needing rest and how much fixtures there are. So maybe he also has a little bit of a say in wanting to rest a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's time for him to get back. Cause look, this was a Rodri, by the way. He's not a 33, 34, 35-year old. He's not a 21-year-old, but he's 28, the peak of his prime athletically. So, I don't think it's I don't think load managing, if you want to go an American sports term or an NBA sports term, is quite necessary with Rodri.